here in Australia?
Australians.
You're going to bed, right?
The Beatles may now be thought of squeaky clean wholesome rockers that are a safe bet to play for all ages and sensibilities, but a closer look into their lyrics and legacy will probably make you think twice about that perception. How well do you know your favourite band? Sit back as we uncover the 5 dirty things the Beatles did way back. Make sure to like the video, hit subscribe and that bell notification as we tackle all things Beatles with new videos every week. Without further ado, let's begin. Alien encounters, secret identities, satanic curses. All this and more are part of the dark side of the Beatles, the biggest band in history. You might know their music, but there are a lot of creepy Beatles stories out there that you probably don't know. Paul McCartney revealed in detail exactly what he and bandmates John Lennon, George Harrison and Ringo Starr got up to on tour. The legendary rocker recalled a host of sexual escapades, including one incident at John's home. The star disclosed that he and John once indulged in group masturbation, where they pleasured themselves in the same room. He said, "And instead of just getting roaring drunk and partying, I don't even know if we were staying over or anything, we were all just in these chairs, and the lights were out, and somebody started masturbating, so we all did." Not only that, but they also encouraged each other by shouting out names to help them stay aroused. The revelations didn't stop there. Paul also revealed the truth behind John's quote, which read, "There was nothing about orgies and the shit that happened on tour. There weren't really orgies to my knowledge, there were sexual encounters of the celestial kind and there were groupies," Sir Paul said. However, Paul did say that he once had a wonderful experience with 2 hookers in Las Vegas. Paul said, "There was once when we were in Vegas where the tour guy, a fixer, said, 'You going to Vegas, guys? You want a hooker?' We were all like, yeah, and I requested 2. I remember there was someone in a club that he'd met and they'd gone back to the house because the wife fancied John, wanted to have sex with him. So that happened and John discovered the husband was watching. That was called kinking in those days. So I think maybe John experienced a bit more of that than I did. I just didn't fancy it, that kind of thing. Someone else's wife? I definitely wouldn't want the husband to know. You know, that seems sensible to me." All these are just a tip of all the dirtiest things the Beatles did then. Let's uncover more. 1. George had an affair with Ringo's wife. By the late 1960s, the Beatles had spent the better part of a decade in constant contact with each other, and cracks had begun to emerge between the group, to say the least. These tumultuous times also took their toll on the Fab Four's personal lives, as the long-standing friendships between the group members began to be tested by external matters. After the group breakup in the early 1970s, the relationships between the former bandmates continued to deteriorate, possibly best exemplified by when George Harrison engaged in an affair with Ringo's wife, Maureen Starkey. The story goes that George announced his intentions at a dinner party at Ringo's house in front of his then-wife and former bandmate before engaging in a brief fling with Maureen. The affair would mark the beginning of the end of George's marriage to Pattie Boyd, who would later go on to marry legendary guitarist and close friend of Harrison, Eric Clapton. 2. The boys had some crazy acid trips. Despite their early reputation in the British media as clean-cut pop stars, particularly compared to the Rolling Stones, the Beatles became one of the earliest and most recognizable public advocates for the use of psychedelic drugs during the 1960s. During the spring of 1965, Lennon and Harrison had become psychopaths for the first time completely unwittingly, as their dentist John Riley spiked their tea with the then legal hallucinogen without telling them during a dinner party at his house. Completely unaware what they were about to experience, Harrison and Lennon left the house by car and continued to travel throughout the night as they enjoyed their first trip. But that wasn't the only time a member of the Beatles was close to going over the edge after taking psychedelics. Lennon would later become a regular user of LSD. During the recording of Getting Better during the Sgt. Pepper sessions, John mistakenly took acid in pill form and had to be led up to the roof of Abbey Road Studios by producer George Martin to get some fresh air. 3. George lost his virginity in front of his bandmates. Several of the most fabled tales surrounding the band's early career emanate from the trips the group made to Hamburg, Germany to ply their craft before becoming international superstars. The group made multiple trips to the seaside city during the early 60s, refining their skills as a group in marathon sessions, often playing for up to 6 hours a day. While the CD club situated in the red light district of the German city proved an effective way of improving the Beatles as a live act, the group were hardly compensated like the rock stars they would eventually become. With all 4 members members of the group sleeping in a single converted storeroom next to the toilets in the back of the Bambikino club. However, it was in this single room where the band got up to much of their notorious evil during this time, including Harrison, the youngest of the group, losing his virginity while the other band members sat in the room with him. George later recounted his experience. "My first shag was in Hamburg, with Paul and John and Pete Bess all watching. We were in bunk beds. They couldn't really see anything because I was under the covers, but after I'd finished they all applauded and cheered. At least they kept quiet while I was doing it." 4. John assaulted someone for calling him gay. While many of these entries show the Beatles in a positive light, it's also worth noting some of the darker aspects of the group that have largely been discarded in the mythology surrounding the band that has grown since their split. One of the most infamous incidents around the group's early years came during an event held to celebrate McCartney's 21st birthday in Liverpool. Lennon had recently returned from a holiday in Spain with Beatles manager Brian Epstein, and rumours had circulated that the pair had engaged in an affair. So when Bob Wooler, DJ at the legendary Cavern Club, referred to Lennon's vacation as a honeymoon, Lennon was furious. A drunk Lennon then proceeded to physically attack Wooler so brutally that the DJ would have to be treated in hospital. John would later apologise for his actions, but the press had already caught wind of the incident, reporting that Lennon had given Wooler £200 in damages for the assault. 5. The Beatles purposely pronounced "Sie liebt dich," the German version of "She Loves You," incorrectly. This essentially makes the song "She Loves Dick." The Beatles recorded German versions of both "She Loves You" and "I Want to Hold Your Hand" in 1964. For "Sie liebt dich," the band completely mispronounced "dich" as "dick," a mistake that seems suspicious since the Beatles spent years in Hamburg. Speaking with superfan Mike Brown, who's maintained arguably in the most in-depth list of Beatles anomalies what goes on since the 90s, "Is that an intentional little joke? I think they probably knew and just tried to slide it past the establishment," he said. They spent long enough in Germany to have picked up the correct pronunciation. On Mike Brown's "She Loves You" entry, he explained, "I'm sure Paul and John knew that dich is not pronounced as dick, but the boys are clearly singing "Sie liebt dich." Haha. The American version might have a dirty element to it as well. Brown writes that the Beatles actually might be singing something other than the official lyrics. Sounds like "she loves you, she'd love to, she loves you," as opposed to the official lyrics. If these are the lyrics being sung, it's just their naughty little joke. She'd love to, and you know that can't be bad, wink wink. Aside from all that, I've mentioned earlier the Beatles concert was said to always smell of urine. Owners of the places where the Beatles concert organisations were held expresses this allegation again and again by swearing to God. For example, John B. Lynn says, "The Beatles were a mediator to witness women's hysteria. I remember that I looked around and rivers flowed because of piddle in the saloon. Women really were wetting themselves due to excitement. That's why when it said woman, the smell of women's piddle comes to my mind." Lastly, it was said that the Beatles kick-started the notorious Devil Horns hand sign. It's a universal heavy metal sign language for U-rock, and it's also widely considered a symbol of the beast, the horned man, the devil, or whatever other monikers you wish to slap on the Dark Lord of the underworld that all rock and roll fans secretly worship. There you have it all, guys. Drop a thumb up in the comment section. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons if you've not done that, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. The handles are in the description box below.